Yo, Zach, before you do, I actually want to start because I think this is a good place to start, mainly, right? So, for those of y'all who are watching the show now, what we're about to do is we're going to give some biggest storylines so far in training camp. There's a lot of reports and stuff like that. But, Zach, the reason why I interrupted you and I want to go first is because I think this storyline is broad, but it sums up where we are right now in the timeline of the NFL calendar, right? And my biggest storyline is the preseason load management theory, right? Because I think it's very important. Preseason starts tomorrow. Okay. And you have news circulating that Rodgers is not going to start, he's not going to play the preseason and he's looking like he's going to sit to week one. You got Caleb Williams, who we was looking forward to seeing tomorrow in the Hall of Fame game. He's not playing. So I think this is a very good place to start because you look at Rodgers and he's 40 years old, and I get it. Maybe rest is something, but hey, he's been resting for a long time. This guy only played a couple drives last year. You would think you want continuity there with your offense, with your offensive line. And I think, with the Jets, a lot of people is thinking that, oh, the position of need was the offensive line. Okay, we signed some guys in the off season, but it's bigger than that. It's about continuity. It's about working with those guys and feeling things together. This way you can have that rep, the reps in order to go into the year together. So I think, Rodgers should be playing, in the preseason just to get his feet wet. We're talking about an Achilles injury that ended his season literally right when it began. And then last year, we all know the struggles he had. I think it would be a good thing for him to start. And I think when you talk about this as a broad topic, Sean McVay, you blame him. He was a guy that adopted and revolutionized the way how the NFL treats the preseason. And I think it could be a good thing for some teams, and I think it could be a bad thing for some teams. Caleb Williams, like, what are you doing, bro? Like, you're not Jordan, you're not Tom Brady, you're not Aaron Rodgers. Why are you not playing? I just don't get it. Like, I hate it because I think that if you're playing the game with this scary mindset of, oh, we don't want to get our guys hurt and injured, football is dangerous, bro. Rodgers' season ended when it began last year. Okay, he barely played in the preseason. He played a few. Guess what? It didn't matter because he got hurt. So I don't know, Zach, if you want to continue where I left off, or Zay, by all means.
No, I just think each situation is different, and you have to evaluate it based on that individual situation and what you think the best course of action is. Caleb Williams not playing tomorrow, I don't have a huge problem with it, just because we have to remember it's an extra preseason game. Like, every team in the NFL plays 3 preseason games besides the Bears and Texans, who play tomorrow. That's a 4th preseason game.
That's reps. Like, this guy's
it is. But let me ask you, like, is there a difference? I understand he's not playing tomorrow, but is there a difference if Caleb Williams plays 3 preseason games compared to 4?
Listen, anytime you have an opportunity to get in game against other teams' reps, you want to do that. I think there's so much pressure on the Bears organization now that they supplied Caleb with a very good team. They are no longer, it's a different situation, right? Normally, when you're in a situation like this, there's no expectations. When you pick that high, you take a guy number 1. With the Bears, because of the hype, because of the moves they made, people want them to win a division off the gate. But we have to realize there's a rookie quarterback at the helm, and the likelihood of that, you need to get him going, early and get him reps. Even if it was a drive, I'll be fine with having him for a drive just to kind of get a feel for the NFL. This way, the next game you up that and things of that nature.
I think I would agree if he was sitting the entire preseason, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Like, tomorrow, like the best players are going to be 3rd and 4th stringers. Like, I just don't have a huge issue with it because none of the Bears' first team offense is going to be out there. I wouldn't want to play Caleb behind my 3rd string offensive line. Like, I wouldn't have any interest in doing that.
Yeah, I think if the entire starters are playing tomorrow and it wasn't Caleb Williams, he's the only one not playing, that I'll raise a little more of a red flag. Like, you need to get the reps, as Lil was stating. But if none of the starting line is playing, you don't want them to get hurt.
It goes back to the point. It's lower management. Play some guys. You know what I'm saying? It's a drive,
I'm not a guy. I don't like bubble wrapping players. I personally think it hinders them more than elevates their play or keeps them fresh for the next game. I feel like the bubble wrap situation, if you've seen it all across sports, it hasn't worked. Guys get hurt no matter what. Freak injuries happen. That's why they call it freak injuries. It happens. I think you're more likely you're less likely to get hurt if you're playing, because now you're going through the rhythm, you're going through the motions, and your body's getting acclimated to those motions, to those hits, and things of that nature. I think Caleb Williams in this situation, though, like if he plays a drive game like game 1, 2 for preseason stuff like that, that's fine. But I've been an advocate saying that Bears offensive line is horrendous. I think it's scary to play behind that offensive line, and I think he's in for a rude awakening, especially in a game that's very fast. They're very well acclimated to chasing after mobile quarterbacks. I think it's gonna be a situation where Caleb Williams has to make a decision in terms of what he could do behind this offensive line. I think he wants to prepare himself for all havoc when that regular season happens. I think he'll play more like a half game 3 of the preseason. They get like more of a full repertoire of like multiple drives. I just don't think tomorrow is the Hall of Fame game. I understand the NFL is trying to like make this a Hall of Fame game, like, oh, the stars are here, they're playing and XYZ, but it's not going to happen, especially like Zach said, an extra preseason game, which they eliminated. They eliminated 4 preseason games, and now you're giving guys an extra one. Like, unless you're making this their third, and then you remove that third week for them, so they have 2 weeks off. That's the only thing that kind of makes sense. But yeah, it's kind of weird.
What y'all think about Aaron Rodgers? Y'all guy, right? I talked about y'all guy, y'all Jets fans here on this show. Do you think that it'll be a mistake? Because it's not official yet, but that's the word on the street. Do you think it will be a mistake if Rodgers does not see the field until week 1?
I believe it's a mistake. I think he needs to get as many reps as possible behind an offensive line to get a good feel. And even if that takes a couple of weeks, I understand he's been working with them in preseason, but he hasn't even been working with the full offensive line this preseason, because I believe Morgan Moses hasn't been playing yet. He hasn't been cleared to go. So I think similar to last year, where he wasn't really behind that offensive line the entire preseason, and then when week 1 came, he gets hurt in 4 games because he's not not because of that, but it was a freak injury. But I think he should get comfortable with the offensive line he has. I think as many reps as possible is important. I understand.
He did get hit on that play, Zay. So it's not only a freak injury. The lineman didn't block, so it was a combination of both.
Otherwise, they had back-to-back cut blocks that was just unorthodox. But the point being, he needs to get as comfortable as possible in that pocket. Knowing who's offensive line are, knowing how they move is important and is crucial, not only in the training camps, but also what's happening in a live game action. So I think he should play as many preseason games as possible. It doesn't have to be full games. It could be one drive. It could be one damn play, but get comfortable behind this offensive line to see how they block with you against the opposing player.
So my opinion on this is, like, you can't play him, because if he gets hurt again, the season's over before it started, and it's just not worth it. I think the common belief inside the Jets building, and really outside of it too, I think we would all agree, like, if the Jets don't make the playoffs this year, everyone's gone. Robert Saleh's gone. Joe Douglas is gone. Nathaniel Hackett's gone. Maybe even Aaron Rodgers is gone himself. Like, there's just so much on the line. And you saw that it doesn't matter how many snaps are out there. Like, one bad hit, and it could all be gone for the entirety of the season. And although I do think the Jets upgraded at backup quarterback in a big way in Tyrod Taylor, a guy that could come in if you need him for like 4 to 5 games, and he could hold the ship steady. But if Aaron Rodgers were to get seriously hurt again, the season's over. And I just don't think the risk is worth it. He's 40 years old. He's been in training camp, participating every day. I wouldn't play him. The risk does not outweigh the reward.
Tom Brady was 40 when he joined Tampa, and he played in the.
But was he coming off a torn Achilles though? Like, no.
He wasn't coming off a torn Achilles, but he was 40 years old. The guy was, still in the preseason. He knew the gravity of the moment. He knew that he was on a new team. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin trying to build chemistry, and obviously Rodgers been on the team for a couple of years. But guess what? Like, how many reps have they got in game situations, in real life game situations? Not a lot. It's almost like he's new again. It's almost like the Jets free agent move also was signing Aaron Rodgers, even though it wasn't, because he's new to the team again. We barely saw him last year. So I think he want to get those reps, but that's just me. All right, who's next?
All right, guys. I'll bring my top training camp storyline to the table, and I'm going to go into the AFC North, but it's not the storyline you think it is. I wanted to talk about the Bengals. One question I've brought up many times on this show over the course of the last few months was, who is the biggest challenger in the AFC to the Chiefs between Baltimore, Houston, Buffalo, Cincinnati? There are so many reasonable choices you can make, and I think the Bengals are right there. When we did this segment on this show a few weeks back, I believe both Lil and I, we both said the Bengals, if we had to pick one team, would be our biggest challengers to Kansas City in the AFC, because we've seen them go into Arrowhead Stadium and beat the Chiefs in a playoff game. They almost did it again the next year. But another reason why I was really high on the Bengals going into training camp was, unlike last offseason, it seemed to me that the whole T. Higgins situation had been resolved, right? He signed his franchise tag early and made it clear that he would be showing up to training camp ready to go, even though he doesn't have a contract, just because he didn't want to be a distraction. He wanted the number one focus in that locker room from the start of training camp to be championship or bust. And I respect him for that. I don't think every player in the league would do that. And again, that is a big reason why I said Cincinnati would be my biggest threat to Kansas City in the AFC. But then it turns out Jamar Chase just isn't practicing because he wants his new contract. And in a situation like this, I try my best to put myself in that individual's shoes. And I got to be honest, if I'm T. Higgins, Jamar Chase not practicing, that doesn't sit right with me. The Bengals literally told T. Higgins, like, sorry, bro, you're not good enough. We're not going to pay you because we think Jamar Chase is better than you. And that's a legitimate reason, in my opinion, to make a scene and get pretty pissed off. But he didn't, because a championship is his number one priority. But then Chase shows up to camp and immediately starts being a distraction by not practicing because he wants a new deal for himself. If I'm T. Higgins, I'm not going to lie, that would really bother me, and I would feel pretty betrayed by that. And as a guy that was pretty high on the Bengals going into training camp, like, I'm not really sure how to feel about that situation. I was really surprised Jamar Chase isn't practicing, and I think that's a major distraction to this team right now.
You know, it's funny because I was actually looking at that as well in terms of like training camp news, and that's a huge story, especially what's happening in that division. We're talking about a Browns team that's looking to revamp who they are and get back to that 11-win season. We're talking about a Steelers team that added so much during the offseason in terms of offensive linemen, in terms of two quarterbacks, two brand new quarterbacks at that, new offensive coordinator. They added so much, and we already know that the king of the hill in that division. So it's interesting that the Bengals, who were last place last year, are seem like they're taking a day, like they're just taking it off season off, literally. Jamar Chase, big distraction. Him going a contract extension. T. Higgins, he is another one. Is he going to be happy going into the season? He has no future, basically, essentially, and he's still trying to play for one. No Joe Mixon, so now they have a new running back situation. So there's a lot of different situations happening with the Cincinnati team that is not football related. Don't
forget Joe Burrow's hair too.
Joe Burrow cutting his hair off, midlife crisis, midlife Joe. So it's interesting what's going to happen with this team. You understand the talent's there. But also not even mentioning that Trey
Hendrickson, yeah.
Hendrickson, he's not there in training camp either.
Yeah, Sam Hubbard,
So it's a situation where this Bengals team is not looking good. We're looking at a situation where they might go right back to last place in that division because the rest of the teams in that division are hungry. They want it. They want it badly. They're not looking for contract extensions, especially a guy like Justin Fields who could clamor, I want a contract extension. Russell Wilson, I want more money. I want to be here for long term. I want my long-term contract. None of these guys are settled in for long-term. Everyone's done after this year, but they're playing for something. And it seems like the Bengals are the complete opposite. They have time on their hands, and they know it. They're all young, and I think it's showing in their attitude and how they're approaching the game, how they're approaching their division nonetheless. So it's interesting what this Bengals team is doing. I understand everybody must get paid somehow, some way. But Bengals, your division's not light. It's not an easy division. Y'all don't just got a bunch of y'all don't got a bunch of people y'all can just walk through to get to where y'all want to get to. This is a tough division, and you have to be on point because if not, you're going to be entering another losing season. Well, not losing, but bottom of the division season. Basically.
Yeah. I mean, look, you talked about Joe Burrow, his haircut. I cannot, and I said this to myself earlier today before we got on the air, I cannot picture Trevor Lawrence with a haircut like that, bro. I just
remember Justin Herbert's haircut.
Yeah, I mean Justin Herbert, but Trevor Lawrence, I cannot picture him with a haircut. With all due respect, but I think for me, going back to this topic and staying the course here, I think when you talk about the reason why when you get a golden opportunity to be in a Super Bowl game against whoever team it was, right? They was against the Rams for them, right? When you get to a game like that That's why you try to win it, because you never know when you could get back there and what are the obstacles going to be after that. Keeping the band together. Guys want to get paid, individually. Some guys are more, individual driven than team driven, right? And then you got injuries that could happen. Ally Joe Burrow, he got hurt last year and he wasn't there to go on another run with them last year. You never know what can happen. The year before that, they got robbed by the referees and it allowed the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl, right? You never know when you're going to get robbed. You never know when you're going to get injured. You never know when money is going to be an issue, when it's time to dish out the checkbook. And I think for a guy like, Jamar Chase, he already said this last year when being interviewed that he want all the money. And even then, it's funny that you bring that up, Zach, about you believing that T. Higgins should be upset right now. I said when he said that, I want all the money, knowing that T. Higgins was also due for a contract. I thought T. Higgins should have felt the type of way about that comment that was made at that time. So now that only modifies that. And now we get a situation when you got some of your best players, Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, Jamar Chase, not, going to camp. Now that's a big distraction when you should be motivated to undo what happened when you got to the Super Bowl, which was not capping that off. You got Kansas City, who's out here dominating the league. First of all, at one point, it was Joe Burrow and Mahomes. 1A, 1B. And now Joe Burrow was, he was hurt last year. And now Mahomes is just taking all that with no competitive guy other than Josh Allen. And he has Josh Allen's number. You should be wanting to go at that and get back on the field. And right now, they seem like they're just worried about money, and it's a big distraction over there. And I don't think it's a good look for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations.
I'll go with the pick. We got the image right there. I'm definitely talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I've been high about them in their offseason, what they have going on, what they did on both sides of the football. But let's mainly focus on the Russell Wilson versus Justin Fields quarterback battle, right? QB1 battle. Mike Tomlin, before the season was started, already announced Russell Wilson was the QB1. He stated it firm and clear. Once Russell Wilson touched down on the team, he will be QB1. I do not think he anticipated Justin Fields operating in this offense that Arthur Smith, Arithmetic Smith, as Lil would say, is creating for this team, and how he's thriving in training camp, how he's able to make the throws, not only within the numbers, outside of the numbers, making 20 to 30-yard passes down the field accurately, something he struggled with throughout the duration of last season. Now, it's all training camp, so you can only take everything with a grain of salt. He's doing fantastic in training camp. That is great. We have to see it happen during the games. And when can he get those opportunities? During the preseason games. These 3 preseason games are crucial, not only for Justin Fields, but for Russell Wilson. Because if Justin Fields plays extremely well and dominates in these preseason games, Mike Tomlin has a decision to make when week 1 happens. If he plays just okay, Russell Wilson is number 1, no question about it. But if Justin Fields dominates in these preseason performances, he has a decision to make with that week he has before they go into week 1. Does Justin Fields have enough to be QB1 for my team after we just saw what he saw for 3 games straight? That's going to be a great question to ask himself. That's going to be a great question that's going to a lot of fans and media is going to ask. And that's going to be something I would love to see, especially if it does happen. What the hell do you do with Russell Wilson? Because if you backtrack and say, now you're QB2, what is he going to say? Is he going to be a distraction? Is he going to be okay with being a leader from the bench? The guy Justin Fields week in, week out? Is he going to ask out and ask for a trade right away? And if that does happen, imagine the teams that are going to line up to get him. It's so many what ifs that happen in this situation.
Line up to get who? Line up to get
Russell Wilson.
Okay.
Get Russell Wilson.
All right. They line up to get me. Okay, over this guy.
So many different things that can happen. But I'm saying this quarterback battle is fantastic. I love to see that Justin Fields is playing extremely well and getting that confidence he needed to showcase his talents that we all know we had. So I'm excited for it. But this training camp battle is heating up and is one of the biggest storylines of 2024 thus far.
Yeah, Zach, I don't know how you feel about this, but I've been thinking about this the last couple of days. We all know that Russell Wilson had the calf injury, and it allowed Justin Fields to get some, QB1 reps in and work with the number 1 offense. And he's been taking advantage based on reports. of that opportunity, right? And I think that's what you should do when given an opportunity like that, especially when you made it apparent to the media that you're not here to hold the clipboard and go like, no, you want to play because you was a starter before. It's not like a guy who is new to the game, a rookie or whatever, sitting behind a guy. No, you started before, you had your own team, and the only thing you're thinking about is being able to rewrite the chapter that was a bad chapter, which was the Chicago chapter, right? But I think for me, I think the Steelers, and I know I give them a lot of flack. Okay, we could run those clips. You could make a whole documentary of me just going off on Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, right? I'm not here to have a premeditated rant here. Whatever happens, happens. If it comes, it comes, whatever. But I think for me, we already know how I feel about handing jobs so early. Okay, I think there should be a level of a competition, right? I think it should be an open competition. I think if Justin Fields goes out there and proves through preseason that he is the better quarterback than Wilson, then he should be starting week 1. However, I still think that if the Steelers' plan is to rock out with Wilson, barring that Wilson doesn't show that he's capable of initiating that, then they should stick with that plan. And the reason why I say that is because I thought about it. There's a clear advantage that a team has when a QB2 comes into the middle of a game, of a regular season game, because of a struggling QB1. There's an advantage there because guys are not watching film and prepping for that QB2. So push comes to shove, you get out there, you name Wilson as your guy, and you struggle early on week 3, week 4, and you're losing the game. And Wilson, because the Steelers have always found a way. I'll give them little credit where credit is due. They are a team that it's like a kid doing homework before the class start, right? They do their homework right there before the class start, right? Instead of doing it at home. Translation, what I mean is they make it hard for themselves to win a game. They can have a struggling quarterback, but they do just enough defensively to win the game at the end. So let's say Wilson is struggling and he's incompetent. Then guess what? You pull him out, you throw Fields in there. Nobody's watching film. He could take off and go. Think about Lamar Jackson when he sat, to start off his rookie year. They put him in there, and there's no film that you could watch to even know who Lamar Jackson is and to prepare for that athleticism and that out of structure ability. So even though Fields, Fields has been a starter and defenses across the league saw him, they're not preparing for him. So I think you can roll with that plan if Russ shows that he can be that guy to be the number one. Like I said, I'm not handing him the job, but I do think if push comes to shove, that was the case and Fields was on the bench, you throw Fields in there, you allow him to be consistent and learn. I think that could actually pay dividends going forward because we all know even when we think that they're going to be done, Mike Tomlin just finds a way to keep a streak alive, a meaningless streak alive at the end. So I don't think it would mean too much, especially if they do it early.
Yeah, guys. So I had a take for 99 on this topic. I believe it was like a few months ago now, and I kind of feel ahead of the curve. And basically in that take, I just said the sooner the Steelers start Justin Fields at quarterback over Russell Wilson, the better, even though at that point it was really looking, the assumption was that, yeah, Russ was 100% going to be the starter. And in that take for 99, I said something, and I wanted to go back to what Zay said about Russ if Justin Fields were to win the job and how he would handle that. I said it during that take for 99, and I'm going to repeat it here. This quarterback situation and this quarterback competition reminds me so much of Mac Jones versus Cam Newton in New England, Mac Jones's rookie year. Because when Mac Jones was drafted, the assumption was, oh, this guy's not ready. There's not enough. We know he won at Alabama in large part because of the talent around him, and New England doesn't have that talent. But then in training camp, the more time went on, it was just clear Mac Jones was the better quarterback than Cam Newton. And the next thing you know, Mac Jones started the whole year and he led the Patriots to the playoffs that year. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen here. Russell Wilson is going to be a Steeler, I think, by week 1. But I did find it interesting. Russell Wilson, I didn't buy the explanation of, oh, it's just a minor calf injury. He's fine. He's missing the first day of practice, but we're not concerned at all, Mike Tomlin said. I don't buy that. This is Russell Wilson we're talking about. Mr. Tryhard, a guy that's on a new team, a guy that knows that Justin Fields is lurking, and he wants to play just as much as he does. And I just feel like Russ is a guy that lives for the team camaraderie. He lives for training camp and practicing with his teammates. You guys remember when he was in Seattle? Ironically, this was that Sunday night game they played in Pittsburgh when Russ didn't play, but they were showing him pregame. He's doing like a whole game routine, simulating a game. He's like high-fiving teammates that don't even exist. Like, this is Russell Wilson's Super Bowl, the training camp and camaraderie. And the fact that he's not even out there kind of suggests to me that this injury is way more serious than the Steelers are leading on. And I think long-term, it could be a good thing because we know deep down that Russell Wilson has no shot of being the Steelers' long-term quarterback of the future. Although you look at his numbers last year and look and you say, 26 interceptions and 26 touchdowns and 8 interceptions in Denver last year, that he must have had a pretty good year. Like, no, anyone who watched the Broncos knows that in 2024, Russell Wilson is not capable of winning big things in the NFL if he's your quarterback. And we know that guy we saw in Seattle, that guy's long gone. He doesn't exist anymore. And I do think Justin Fields, although his stint in Chicago was not great, we all could agree that situation was terrible, and he really had no chance to succeed, at least I think, or win in a big way. And I'm not saying this Pittsburgh situation is great, but it's significantly better than Chicago. And I do think Justin Fields could spark some hope. He could spark some optimism into a Steelers franchise right now that really needs it. So although I don't root for injuries, I hope Russ gets healthy. I do think long-term, this could be a very good thing for the Steelers. And if I'm a Steeler fan, I'm very encouraged by the reports on Fields so far.
I mean, look, I'm not going to overreact to the reports and the highlights of Justin Fields, throwing a couple deep balls down the field. We all know he had a strong arm. Just by watching him in college, you would have thought you would have saw more of that in the NFL, but at times you did. We all know he had the strong arm. We all know he's athletic. We all know he's a playmaker. He can make the plays. He can take over a game. We know that. But what we don't know is, can he be consistent? What we don't know is if he can process what he's seeing on the field. Okay, processing and being consistent, sometimes accuracy is his main deficiencies. Can he overcome that? That's why the preseason is very important. I think for me, it goes back to my point. If Wilson is ready and is capable of starting week 1, because he's shown that it's a close competition, and our game plan is to set up a short-term and long-term plan of having Fields be our guy of the future, then you start off with Wilson, and if he struggles, you pull him out and you throw Fields in there because there's going to be momentum. How many guys we seen come into the middle of a game? Baker Mayfield light it up when he first got into the game about week 3 or something like that, right? In Tyler Taylor. Gardner Minshew, same thing. Right. Tommy DeVito, same thing. Tyrod Taylor, same thing. So many quarterbacks, AR-15, same thing. Right. I think he started actually, but that don't count. But Gardner Minshew for AR-15, same thing. So Gardner Minshew again, because I wasn't talking about Gardner Minshew from last year. I was talking about from the Jaguars. But again, Gardner Minshew, right? So so many guys you've seen, they get that opportunity. Jalen Hurts, they get the call to come in the game. Lamar Jackson, they get the call to come in the game. And then guess what? It's like they have the momentum on their side because the defense is not preparing for that guy. So I think it could allow Fields to get momentum and try to build some consistency with that momentum that could benefit him and the Steelers going forward. I think what Mike Tomlin should want to do and should prove is that he can actually develop a quarterback or something, because we come here, and we give him this label. Oh, he's a top 5 coach in the league. Nonsense. Okay. Clearly not a top 5 coach. He hasn't won anything. He hasn't won a playoff game in about 7 years. Okay. But how many guys, and it's funny, I know I may be all over the place here, but I'm coming. Zay, he mentioned Kyle Shanahan should be fired on a couple shows ago if he doesn't win a Super Bowl, but he got to a Super Bowl, but yet doesn't have the same energy for a guy like Mike Tomlin who hasn't won a playoff game in 7 years. But yet Kyle Shanahan has always shown us one thing: consistency. No matter who the quarterback is, he's going to win with that guy. When you come to Mike Tomlin, who has this man developed at the quarterback position? Not Big Ben. He inherited Big Ben. Okay, not Mitch Trubisky. He wasn't able to save and resurrect Mitch Trubisky's career, right? He wasn't able to develop, Kenny Pickett's career. Who has this man developed? So you have this situation where you have two quarterbacks, one who is trying to resurrect his career in Wilson, another who is trying to resurrect his career in Fields and develop because he hasn't been developed. His development was shot in Chicago. Can Mike Tomlin finally, since y'all calling this guy top 5 coach, forget the playoffs and not winning in the playoffs, can he develop or resurrect a quarterback's career for the first time in his career? I guess we'll find those answers out pretty soon.
Again, I said Kyle Shanahan deserves to be fired if he doesn't win the Super Bowl this year because the past couple Super Bowls was in his control and he lost the game. We all agreed Kyle Shanahan lost the Super Bowls, the last couple Super Bowls he's been a part of. He has lost them. It has been Kyle Shanahan. We all agree. It hasn't been players. It wasn't lack of talent. It wasn't because guys were hurt. It's because Kyle Shanahan lost them the game. We said it multiple times. That's why I said he deserves to be fired, because when it comes to the big game, he don't follow his own game plan. He decides to go off the rails. He loses their game. I don't know what he decides to do. And I don't know what, if it's anxiety, or he doesn't know what to do, or he feels like his game plan is not working in the middle of the game, despite him having the lead. He just loses the game. That's what he does. That's not me saying it. That's everybody saying it. We all agreed simultaneously. That's why I say he deserves to be fired. You're saying you want to fire Mike Tomlin because his team is not, his roster is not even a top 15 roster, top 16 roster, but somehow, some way, every single year, they have a winning record.
Yeah, this winning record.
It's not good. Last year, because we all said last year the offensive line was terrible. The Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line has been horrible. And somehow, some way, they still win games. When the offense had a horrible point differential, they were winning games despite having a negative point differential for majority of the season. And they're winning games and they're having winning seasons. That's why you don't fire Mike Tomlin, because for somehow, some way,
Zay, let me ask you a question.
Rosters win games.
Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
How much pressure should be on Mike Tomlin? Obviously, he got his contract, so there is no pressure.
Yeah,
clearly.
well, I was gonna say, bro, sorry to cut in, but I see where you're coming from, but let's be honest, there should be a lot of pressure, but there is none.
But it's not. But I want to ask Zay individually, okay, from his perspective, based on you defending this cat every second of the day, how much pressure should it be on Mike Tomlin from your individual perspective to win a playoff game to justify you ranking him in so highly regards?
No, it's tremendous pressure for him to win a playoff game. It's tremendous pressure. Not excusing.
Not according to the
him.
Steelers, though. They're just giving him an extension.
No, they gave him, like I said, they gave him an extension because they have winning seasons. That's why they give him an extension, because they're winning seasons. That's why. And they acknowledged that the roster was not up to par the last few years. I feel like personally they answered a lot of the questions I had about.
It's not only that, bro. How many coaches have the Steelers had in the last 30 years?
Like 2, right? Is it 2?
About that, 3, but about that. Exactly. Yeah, stability. That's what they prioritize.
Absolutely. But why is it stable? Because if he had 5 to 6 losing seasons the last 5-6 years, he would have got fired. We would have been calling for his job. Like if he was hardball, where you can have 4 to 5 losing seasons and still have your job, that would be a different story. But
and how many coaches we seen get fired after losing a playoff game?
Quite a
lot. We see coaches.
How many had 20 winning seasons back? It's only, like I said, it's only because he has all those winning seasons. That's why you don't fire him, because it's something, for whatever reason, his team doesn't give up on him. For whatever reason, they know the roster's not up to par. They just do not give up on him, and they win games. They win games they're not supposed to win, and that's the more important thing. They have seasons where like they're 9-8, they're 10-7, whatever it is, or like 10-6 before they did the extra game for 17 games. Like this Steelers fans like, oh, he doesn't know how to just like sell, and they don't know how to just lose games. Like he'd rather lose all the way or win. Why we have to keep being mediocrity, X, Y, Z? Well, that's not on him. Like how you blaming him for the team not playing well sometimes, and then games where they show out. He just does with his job. He does his job extremely well, and that's why this year I feel like there's a tremendous pressure to win a playoff game, because I feel like a lot of the questions I had in terms of offensive line, in terms of linebackers and things of that nature, the Steelers has answered, and now there's going to be a situation where you have the roster, you have to make something of it. This is the year they have to make something of it. I'm not saying win it all, but you have to win a playoff game, right? That's one of your big things you have about Mike Tomlin. He hasn't won a playoff game in quite some time. You have to win a playoff game this year. You have the roster. You could arguably say you're better than the Browns. You could say you could combat with the Bengals. You could make that playoff leap in their division. You could possibly even take your division, because that division was like what, 3-4 game difference. You could even if everything goes right for you, you could take that division. You got to make sure that the offense scores points because that was the biggest issue. Your offense was not scoring points last year, so something has to give.
All right. I want to go with my next one. Anybody have any more comments to that? Steelers. I want to go with my last one. This is my last one, and then whoever got last one, by all means. I want to go to New York, and I want to talk about the Giants, the G-men. Will the Giants have an aggressive mindset in 2024? When you look at them last year and the offense in particular, 29th in total offense, 30th in scoring offense. Translation, they was one of the worst offensive teams last year. And we all know their offensive line was like a turnstile, right? It was a sack party in the backfield. You know, Daniel Jones is constantly sped up through progression because he can't get off his first read because he's either going to be sacked or rush to throw. And I think when you talk about just adopting a aggressive mindset, you look at the guys that they have at wide receiver, starting with the guy they drafted, I believe number 6, Malik Neighbors. You look and you watch these highlights, you know, every day it seems like we get a Malik Neighbors highlight, whether he's bypassing a defender and getting past the defense, whether he's making an acrobatic catch, whether it just seems like he's going to be the vocal point of the offense, which Saquon Barkley, who they lost, was the vocal point of their offense. So now you lose a playmaker and you add in another playmaker. But will they be aggressive? Will they take more shots down the field? Will they try to make this offense more explosive? Right? You got Malik Neighbors who can get behind a defender. You got Jalen Hyatt, who's known to be a deep threat. You got Darius Slayton, who's known to be a deep threat. I would expect this team to be more aggressive, taking shots down the field. When you look last year, Tyrod Taylor, who's normally a guy who is a guy that's conservative a little bit. People like to call him a game manager. He likes to make the right play. But last year, he took some shots down the field. Surprisingly, he was literally taking a lot of deep shots down the field. Can you do that with Daniel Jones? You know, a guy who sometimes could be inaccurate. You know, sometimes the timing could be off. His timing is off a lot of the times because you need those things. You need good footwork, timing, and accuracy to push the ball down the field. So can Daniel Jones work on those mechanics? Can you protect him up front to give him time to go through progression and get the ball down the field and get those wide receivers to get down the field before he gets sacked in the backfield? So I'm looking at the Giants with a microscope. I want to know if they can, just make the offense look a little bit more explosive and not anemic like it was last year. One more point real quickly here in regards to a guy like Tyrod Taylor who went to the Jets, who was on the Giants last year. A lot of people may bring this up, and it's very fair that Tyrod Taylor came in, same situation, and he looked a little bit more like he got the offense going a little bit more. He looked more controlled. I would say the word I would use, more controlled. Like it wasn't like, he just was calm and controlled and he operated the offense. Tommy DeVito played with more momentum. Daniel Jones, yeah, a lot of it is Daniel Jones as well. He's going to have to show that he could be a competent QB1, especially when you have a guy like Drew Lock, who's known to get the ball down the field, who wants to get the ball down the field. I won't be surprised and shocked if we end up seeing him before the season ends next year or this year.
No, Will, I think that's a good point. And it's interesting with the Giants. I actually think their defense should be pretty good after especially adding Brian Burns. Like you have Burns, Okereke, Thibodeau. That's a really good top 3. I like Deonte Banks in the secondary as well. He's a good young corner. I like some of the young players they drafted in the secondary too to replace McKinney and Nubin, the safety, and Drew Phillips from Kentucky. I think their defense should be pretty good. I think their offensive line should be improved. But at the end of the day, like, it's all on Brian Daboll and it's all on Daniel Jones in this offense. And my worry is that we've just seen this Giants offense without Saquon Barkley, and it has not been good. Even when Saquon was out there last year, it was not very good, and now he's gone. And over the course of the last couple of years, when Saquon's not on the field, this offense is not good. Obviously, drafting Neighbors would help. And Lil Man, I think you're on something. Like, I think you mentioned like, oh, every day I see a Malik Neighbors clip that's going viral, and I'm like, damn, this guy's explosive. Every day I'm seeing that, but I'm also seeing Daniel Jones missing his receivers in practice every day. And I just feel like the only reason why he's going to play and maybe even have a long leash is because they're paying him a ton of money. And I get it, but I was also really impressed with what Drew Lock did in the back end of last year in Seattle. Like the fact that he led that game-winning drive on Monday Night Football against the Eagles, hitting Metcalf, I believe, in the end zone for a clutch, needle touchdown. That was awesome. And I think he does have some potential, especially if you pair him with a guy like Brian Daboll. Like we could criticize Brian Daboll all we want. Last year was the season from hell, but what he did with Tommy DeVito was unreal. And I don't know how many other coaches in the league would have been able to do that. And if you pair Daboll with Drew Lock and Malik Neighbors, that's scary. I think this Giants team could be better than people expect. But I'm just at a point where I'm so out on Daniel Jones, especially Daniel Jones coming off a torn ACL. Like, does anyone think this is going to work? And I know their offensive line is improved, but I just think the Giants will regret not drafting a quarterback in this past year's draft. And I guess the best way to manage that is just to play Lock. I do think if Jones continues to struggle in camp, which all reports